Okay, I think we're ready to go. All right, guys, I'm going to get started. My name is Shannon Miller. Welcome to How to Protect Yourself from Harassment and Stalking. We're going to be covering cyber harassment, stalking, signs of stalking, red flags, things like that. And so this is me. I'm the founder of Lockdown Your Life. I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years. I've been in the security industry for a few longer than that, and I'll get into that later. But since you're here for the presentation and we have quite a bit to get through, so I'm saying this is 90 minutes. It's not going to actually be 90 minutes. Usually I can speed us through about just like 65, 70 minutes if we're lucky. So it's not actually 90. That sounds intimidating. I promise it's not. So we're going to learn how to spot the signs of harassment and stalking, even if one of these has happened to you and even if you think it won't. This is for you if you've ignored your instincts. This is for you even if you're not being harassed or stalked currently, so that when it does happen, you'll see the signs and you'll be better prepared. Okay, who am I and why should you listen to me? I'm Shannon Miller. I am a security specialist and private investigator. And I am trying to figure out, there we go, adding somebody to the meeting. So I help protect your privacy, profit, and peace of mind. I've been in the security industry, defense contracting, and government for I was there for about a decade, then I left. Now I've been doing my self-employed journey of private investigation and security consulting for about 10 years. So that's kind of where I'm at. This is where you can find me online. Please mute yourself if you haven't already. Thank you. Okay, what are we trying to achieve here? We're going to cover the common myths about harassment and stalking. We're going to learn how to assess our risk and our risk profile, sometimes called threat modeling, understanding baseline and red flags, spotting predatory patterns and behavior, and dealing with cyber harassment and stalking on social media. And then, of course, I'm going to have your recommended resources and development of your own security plan. So hopefully after you're listening to the talking head that is me, you will be able to have a little bit of world peace. But since that's not really happening right now, I wish I could promise it was. We're going to talk about baseline behaviors. You're going to learn how to spot red flags, understanding common myths. You'll understand what predatory patterns look like, and you'll have some situational awareness around your own digital assets and online profiles, as well as your physical safety. And then we're going to teach you how to think differently about how your information is used, sometimes for you and sometimes against you. And then we're going to have a plan for when the worst happens. Okay, I have said a lot of words. There's a lot of words on this slide. Please understand we're taking this one bite at a time. If you don't have all the tools right now, that's okay. Follow along step by step. We'll have a replay available afterwards. You can pause the video where you need to. And implement one thing at a time. Maybe not everything will apply to you. Maybe a lot of things will apply to you. It just depends on your situation. And again, this is not meant to be done. This is about layering your security. It's not meant to be done in one go. There's just no way you could cover all of this in one go. It's not possible. Okay, so if you recognize the little villain on the right, that is Dr. Evil. Hopefully we're all familiar with him. I know that dates me a little bit, but let's dive into the content. So if you could tell me in the chat, have any of you been harassed? Have any of you been stalked? Have any of you been scammed? You can give me a 1 for 2 and a yes, 1 for yes and a 2 for no if you want, or you can, completely choose to ignore the questions. Up to you. Anyway, so I think we'll probably have a mix of people. Maybe somebody's known somebody who's had stalking and harassment. Maybe you haven't. Either way, that's okay. If it doesn't apply to you, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're talking about harassment by the numbers. So this is a very broad view. This is from 3 different research studies, including CDC, FBI, and Pew Research. So keep in mind, these are general numbers, and they're only up through about 2021, 2022. So among US adults, 41% or 1 in 10 Americans have experienced some form of online harassment. 2/3 of adults under 30 have been harassed online. And approximately half or 49% of 30 to 49-year-olds have been targeted online. So it doesn't just apply to younger people it doesn't just apply to kids. It doesn't just apply to cyberbullying. This happens to adults, young, old, in the middle, all the way up and down the spectrum. So surprisingly, not anyone in this presentation, 75% of abuse reported happens on social media. If you are identified as a minority or a marginalized group, your chances of getting harassed is a lot higher. So as you can see in the next point, 7 in 10 LGBTQIA identifying, they experience targeted online harassment. 50% reported harassment due to sexual orientation. So, and then you have other marginalized groups such as Black Americans and Hispanic, both identifying as having been harassed online due to their race or ethnicity. Now, if you identify as one or more of these groups, your chances go up exponentially. 80% of stalking victims, now we're getting into stalking by the numbers, 80% of stalking victims report being stalked with technology. So this could be something like malware. It could be something like stalkerware, spyware on their system, a keylogger or something like that. So it's not uncommon for the partners of somebody who's experiencing like domestic violence or intimate partner violence to have their partner install spyware on their phone. So I would say you have a fairly good chance of knowing somebody or being adjacent to somebody who has experienced some type of technical harassment or stalking from a partner, from an ex, from a former boyfriend, from some person on the internet who decided they didn't like them. This is very common, unfortunately. Okay, so the vast majority of tech facilitated stalking victims are pursued by people they know. Now, this is not always, like I said in the previous point, it's not always by somebody you know well. It could be a casual acquaintance, maybe a mutual you have on Twitter or whatever we're calling this site, X, Skitter, Skeeps, whatever, I don't know. Formerly known as Twitter. Maybe you have a mutual on there who decided to follow you and then one day decided that you were the person that annoyed them. They were your biggest fan and then they became your biggest stalker or fan. I had somebody do that to me and I have been stalked by this person for the last almost 3 years now. So not great, I got to say. 41% of undergraduate students have experienced tech facilitated stalking. So when we talk about the numbers of stalking and younger people, sometimes they meet their stalker. It's their boyfriend, their ex-partner. They follow them home from college. I've had a case of that as well. And then intimate partner and dating violence often includes stalking through technology, so sometimes called digital abuse. So the prevalence of us all having mobile phones and multiple devices means it makes it that much easier for somebody who is determined to harass, stalk, abuse, or harm you to find you. Okay. Then we're going to talk about severe harassment and stalking by the numbers. This is more than just, the regular harassment and stalking. This is physical threats, sexual harassment, or physical stalking. So in this case, adults under 50 are more likely to experience physical threats at 17%, sexual harassment at 16%, or stalking at 15%. And then while this second point talks about men reporting that they've experienced more online harassment, the number of women that reports is lower. So men tend to report at higher rates than women. And that's the case for assaults as well, like rape, sexual assault, harassment. Men are more likely to report that than women in the workplace or in their personal lives or to law enforcement. So we're only dealing with a small percentage of the number of cases actually reported. And then again, women report being called offensive names more than men, physically threatened more than men, and sexually harassed more than men. Even though men report more frequently than women, women are still reporting these things happen to them more frequently. The cases of women who report being sexually harassed online has doubled since 2017. Now, keep in mind, these numbers are again based on 3 research studies and are general in nature. Take a moment of levity here. How we stalk people. This is literally how we do it. Okay, let's talk about the myths about harassment and stalking. This is going to get into a little bit about workplace harassment and workplace stalking because that does happen. Sometimes we think of stalkers as somebody that we know really well. Like I said, it could be a colleague, it could be your boss, it could be a supervisor, it could be somebody you met in the workplace, and for some reason they decide that you're the perfect person to bother. So one of the myths is sexual harassment is the only unlawful form of harassment in the workplace. The reality is, according to the EEOC, harassment can be anything that's based on race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, your national origin, your age, a disability, or genetic information. Another myth, if you don't complain about being harassed, then it's not harassment. Just because you didn't report it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So harassment can often create a hostile work environment, whether or not it's reported. And oftentimes we're afraid of some sort of blowback on us if we report it to HR because HR is not our friend. We know this. But if you work in an office environment or a corporate environment and you're experiencing harassment, it's good to find somebody who does feel safe to tell or have somebody with you when you report so that you have a second witness. Another myth, it's only harassment if a manager or supervisor harasses a subordinate. That's untrue. As I said, it could be somebody that's a colleague, a supervisor, a subordinate, even a vendor or a customer that you meet. Another myth, the only person who can report harassment is the person being harassed. If you witness harassment of another employee, if your boss witnesses it, they can also report it, not just you. Now, I know we might all recognize this from Clueless, and I have to say, no, looking back, it didn't age well in a lot of ways because there was a lot of unwanted touching and a lot of unwanted harassment here. Okay, a few more myths before we get even more into the meat and potatoes. Another myth, employees can be terminated for reporting harassment that can't be proven. The reality is companies can retaliate against employees who report harassment in good faith. Managers should have an open door policy and encourage concerns to be reported. Now, every workplace is supposed to have policies on harassment and how you report it. It's supposed to have, even small businesses, but many corporations, they should have a handbook on how you report these things. Do they actually abide by those? I don't know. I know that for me, when I reported somebody, I was working in the federal government, and I had to go through a whole process and investigation with EEOC and to ensure that the harassment suit was handled responsibly. It didn't end well for me, but the other person got terminated. So I guess that did, but there was blowback on me too. Okay. Victims provoke harassment and or assault with the way they dress or act in a promiscuous manner. That is a myth. Let me clarify. Nothing you do, say, wear, no matter how you act, no matter how you're feeling that day, no matter what you've consumed, it does not matter. No one has the right to make you feel unsafe, and no one has the right to harass, assault, stalk, or harm you. Neither the way you dress or any of your behaviors are invitations for unwanted harassment or assault, period. Another myth, if you ignore harassment or stalking, it will go away. It won't, even if you ignore it. I have personal experience with this. Research shows that simply ignoring the behavior is ineffective. Sometimes somebody will escalate until they get your attention and until you respond to them. So we'll get into a little bit more of how to handle that and why you might want to say one thing one time to the person that's harassing or stalking you, just so you have a record of it. But that's not always the right case for everybody. And in some cases, your harasser or stalker may be your ex partner who may be a co-parent with you, and you may be forced to deal with them in a court setting. So there are always going to be extraneous circumstances or things that may affect your particular situation and make it unsafe for you to stop contact with somebody, or make it safer for you to stop contact with somebody. So I don't want to assume anything based on what you're experiencing or what you know. And then myth, stalking isn't common. The reality is approximately 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced stalking in their lifetimes. Think about that. Okay, this is from Schitt's Creek. If you don't recognize it, I encourage you. It's a great show. If you've seen it, please feel free to tell me in the chat. I love this show. This is David is one of my favorite characters. Anyway, harassment and stalking, myth versus reality. Reality is stalking starts early. Approximately 54% of female victims and 41% of male victims experience stalking before the age of 25. The reality is harassment and stalking impact the physical and mental health of victims, and it can cause PTSD and depression. One more stat you should know, 68% of female and 70% of male victims experience threat of physical harm during their lifetime. So not only are you dealing with a 1 in 3 and a 1 in 6 statistic of people possibly being stalked by somebody, you're doubling it that they may experience violence or physical harm as a result of it. These are known as stalking pigeons. Sorry, I try to lace humor in because this is very not fun topic and a lot of heavy things are said. So we're going to have a framework about how we discuss and how we assess what type of harassment and stalking someone is experiencing. And when we're doing victim advocacy, this is the framework that we use. And the reason I want people to know it is so that the behaviors that they identify, the things that the person being harassed, stalked, or harmed, they'll be able to spot these things, because sometimes when you're giving a report or you're cataloging evidence or you're documenting your case or you're looking for things in the moment, you don't remember what those behaviors were and how you would classify them into different groups, such as surveillance, life invasion, intimidation, or interference. These are all things that people who harass and stalk others do, and you'll understand what I mean in a minute. But having this live framework will help you have places to put information, and you'll know what categories these fall into, and you'll be like, oh my god, they did do that to me, they did follow me, they did record my text messages and my audio, and they used a keylogger, and they had an app on my phone, and they physically sat across from my house and watched it. These are things that you can identify as specific actions that this person took. So under the category of surveillance, this is a very long list, very heavy list of all the things. I will give you the slides if there's any interest. You can let me know in the chat if you want the slides after. I'm happy to send them to you. This is a lot of information, but some of these surveillance activities that you may have experienced or you may know or someone else may be doing to the victim. Could include monitoring or tracking them, attempting to access their services such as phone, utilities, or accounts that they use. It's not uncommon for somebody who is harassing an ex-partner or who is obsessed with somebody for some reason. They might try to access them through their phone service or utilities, like porting their number, anything to get this person's attention. So I have seen so many strange and not wonderful things that people do to try to get the attention of somebody they think they are entitled to. Any type of audio, video, or a camera recording in the home, workplace, even hotels or locations where the victim is staying, that's not uncommon. If the person has moved to a friend's house, sometimes the ex-partner will go to the friend's house and video or audio or go to the door or talk to the Ring camera and try to get the attention of the friend who lives there. So it's amazing what people will do. These are all acts of surveillance. Additionally, using tracking devices on cell phones. So this can include like a GPS device on a car, which is illegal in most states unless you're a private investigator or unless you're law enforcement. Air tags in vehicles and bags. We've seen a rising level of people using them to track their luggage. But for somebody who's thinking about harassing or stalking someone else, they're perfect to track where a person is going, where they're going to, tracking patterns of life, very common. Leaving strange or potentially threatening items for the victim to find. Now, this sounds a little bit more like Criminal Minds than reality, but I had a case where the victim was a university professor and one of her students was stalking her, and she came home one day. She went out to her car was in the driveway, and the student had not physically been to her home, but he had managed to hack into her car and leave messages on her display. So like on the electronic display of most modern cars, like if you bought a car in the last 10 years, they all have the electronic display with the GPS, and they have like, all you can sync your mobile phone and everything. They had written her messages. So she gets to her car and all she sees is like, "Oh, good morning," you know what I'm saying. So it's insidious, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for the person doesn't have to physically be there to be harassing or stalking this individual. In this case, they were at one point, but just the fact that they would car hack her, it's a little scary to me. Anyway, additionally, sneaking into a victim's home or car and doing things, like I said, car hacking and doing things to scare the victim or let them know a perpetrator was there. Yeah. I can tell y'all are like if you're thinking about it the way I am every day, you end up being a little bit paranoid. So I hope that doesn't come across to you. I hope you don't get paranoid, but these are just some things I've seen. Um, all of these things that I'm listing are from myself and other victims advocates. And every time I ask them to list the craziest thing that somebody has done, they come up with something I'd never thought of. So I never run out of ideas and I never run out of bullet points. So more surveillance activities, approaching a victim or showing up unwanted somewhere where they're located, their home, workplace, or school, physically watching them, pretending to be the victim. So, for example, let's say that this person is a victim of intimate partner violence and they have chosen to leave their partner and go to a domestic violence shelter. It is possible, and it has happened, where the offender will call the shelter pretending to be a relative of the victim, but not the person stalking them. They'll pretend to be the victim to try to find out if their partner, their ex-partner is there, or they'll try to get information out of the staff. That's very, very common. They could pretend to be the victim advocate. They could pretend to be police. They could pretend to be one of the shelter staff. All of those instances have occurred. Other surveillance methods: unwanted phone calls, emails, text messages, voice memos. My favorite one that people have started doing is Instagram voice messages. That is one that and apparently now the new thing on Twitter that has just been released in the latest app update is that audio calls and voice memos are automatically turned on with the latest update. So you have to physically go in and turn them off. That was new from today. So if you have the app still, or if you're still on Twitter for any reason or know somebody who is, make sure you go into your direct messages and turn off the audio feature because it's automatically turned on for you. Getting a service order for your apartment or home to gain access. This one surprises me sometimes, but they will actually try to, let's say you live in an apartment or condo and you have, your air conditioning stops working, your heating stops working, and you request that maintenance come in and check on you or fix it. Well, they usually have to give like a 24-hour notice, or there has to be a service order in order for them to enter the premises. That's usually the agreement between the landlord and the tenant or maintenance. And I have seen a case where the ex-partner actually got, like, they either worked as a handyman, they knew the handyman, or they knew management at the apartment where the person was living, and they intercepted the work order and entered the premises as the handyman, even though they weren't, or they went in with them just to let the victim know they'd been there. Additional surveillance you might not consider, showing up at classrooms if your or a son or daughter or child is going off to college or has been in college, and they have somebody following them. They might show up at their classes. They might track their mobile phones or use spyware, stalkerware, or air tags, like we said before. Again, some of these are repeats, but they bear repeating. Physically sitting outside of workplace, home, or school, hacking into your home security system, proxy stalking. Now, this is when they use someone that they know, like in their friend group, who knows that they're harassing or stalking this person, and they actually send them in their place to monitor that individual. So it might seem random that you're in the same grocery store as your ex-partner, but it's not you stalking them, it's your friend who is complicit with you. So proxy stalking is far more common than people think. A lot of the times, somebody who is a harasser or stalker doesn't present as one to their friend group, and the um the individual, it seems totally normal. They're just worried about their ex, they're concerned about their kids. They just want to make sure everything's okay, and they explain that their partner just doesn't feel safe around them right now, like they're going through a difficult time or they had a disagreement. They just want to check on them and make sure they're okay. You could convince your friend that it is somehow reasonable for them to like go check on your ex-partner, right? Especially if you've known them the whole length of your relationship or marriage. That's one example of proxy stalking. Obtaining information via public or paid databases to target you, friends, and family. This is unfortunately very common and a lot easier. It makes it easier for people to dox you. Um, and you can just pay a couple bucks to like Bin Verified or InfoTracer or any of those public data aggregation sites and get a $3 report and know almost everything about a person. Now, it might not be 100% accurate, but it's certainly enough to scare somebody. And what you're looking for as a harasser or stalker is fear or reaction or something. And then calling your work or colleagues to get information about you. This is very common as well. Anyone that's in proximity to you or the victim specifically is looking for access any way they can get it. So if they can get it by means of your workplace, or you're a teacher and their fellow educators, or your kids, it's people will stop at nothing when they're obsessed with something, when they're obsessed with someone, when they want to control, because harassment and stalking are acts of control and power over another person. So if you look at it from that framework, it makes it a lot easier to understand, excuse me, um, why somebody would do this. If you think of them as acts of power and control rather than just, oh, this person decided, they were obsessed with me. It's more about they want some sort of connection with you, or they think there's some sort of connection with you. Okay, so we're on the second part of SLY now. This is life invasion. So we covered surveillance pretty in depth. This is covering ways that somebody could harass and stalk or invade the life of a victim. Injury by a stalker into the privacy of the individual or victim is what life invasion is defined as. So this means they're trying to cause harm in some way, invading your privacy in some fashion, making you notice them, making you know that they're there and watching you. So it doesn't have to be physical. It could be the online, barrage of emails, like 20 emails a day, or sending messages through your website, or sending you text messages or voice memos or DMs or whatever. Making a bunch of accounts, targeted harassment style. That's life invasion. Okay, they could also send physical gifts. To job locations, your home, your workplace, your school. Again, asking your friends and family about you, mutuals that you have on social media. If you don't know the person, maybe they're asking around in your friend groups and your group DMs. They could be calling the agency or support group or service that you're getting help from, or if you're in if you're in some type of support group, maybe grief support group, or you're in a mom's group, or you have play dates for your kids, or if your kids are out of the house, maybe you're in a, I don't know, maybe your parent died and you're in a parent grief support group. They're looking for access to you. Wherever you go, whatever you're doing, if they've determined what your interests are and where you go, they're going to find you. It could be a Facebook group, even. If they're online harassing you, they might join the Facebook group. Who knows? Sending their friends to continuously say hi to the victim. This is more of an intimate partner violence situation, but again, it's a form of proxy stalking, or, hey, we just came by to say hi, just to check on you. It's one of those situations that you don't necessarily think of until after the fact. And when you're in the middle of the situation, again, you can't identify, was that weird? Was I overreacting? Was it something, was it something that I should have said no to? Should I have ignored them? These things, all of these things independently don't seem like a lot, but when they start adding up and you can put them in these categories, it helps so much for you to help somebody who is a victim of this, or if you yourself are a victim of this. Again, using monitoring software on victims' devices, so spyware, stalkerware, contacting victims' children. Eesh, bad, very bad, but not uncommon, especially if you're dealing with an ex-partner who you have to get a custody agreement with, or you have joint custody of your children, or you're working it out, or you're getting divorced and it gets contentious. This is not uncommon. More life invasion. Oh, so if they're physically wanting to be in your spaces, maybe they join your gym, your church, or your activity group that you go to just to gain access to you. Unwanted contact again, all of these methods, or following your peers on social media. So they follow all the people you follow on Instagram or on Facebook. This one kind of, it's both horrifying and kind of funny in a bad way, but property invasion. So like physically stealing items from your house. Like there was a case that I had where the ex broke into the house of my client and took some items, but also took the dog out of the backyard. So that happens. And then this one, public humiliation, finding you in public. Let's say you went to the coffee shop and you're meeting with your girlfriends and your ex shows up at the coffee shop, or your friend shows up at the coffee shop. They're forcing a confrontation with you in public. They're publicly humiliating you. They're trying to force confrontation in a public space so that you, as the victim or the person that is being victimized, it feels uncomfortable. You're like, oh, maybe I don't want to cause a scene. I'm gonna, we'll just go talk in the car. It'll be fine. Once you're in the car, you're in a controlled environment where the harasser or stalker or ex-partner can control the conversation, control the pace of things, puts you in a small space with them and makes you feel powerless, makes you feel unsafe, which is their goal. So in this case, they'll use embarrassment or, physically being in your space to make the victim feel more vulnerable. Okay, third part of SLY. So we had surveillance, we had life invasion, now we have interference. Interference can be physically violating a protective order, trying to ruin someone's reputation at their workplace, like calling the workplace, writing bad reviews on Yelp or Google, going to their school, or bad mouthing you to your friends and family. They could also report false allegations to social services or child services. They could file legal cases to force contact with the victim. So for example, custodial interference cases, for example, if you already have court dates, they might be filing legal briefs just to get you into court, or just to make you angry, or just to incite some sort of reaction from you. Even if you haven't done anything wrong as the parent, they want access by any means necessary. Okay, sending people into an agency as the victims to check if you're in the shelter or in any of the groups. I've mentioned that before. And then again, calling in a service order. These are all forms of interference. Please let me know, by the way, if you have any questions as we go on. Interference, these are higher escalation forms of interference, but things like road rage, physical or sexual attack to a victim, attacking your friends and family physically, mentally, or threatening harm to them. And then financial and work sabotage. Again, that's about reputation management and destroying your reputation or getting you fired from your job. Okay, a little more comic relief here. Will I have a sip? Please let me know if you have questions or if I'm going too fast. Okay, so we have covered surveillance, life invasion, and interference. We're now getting to the last part of SLY, which is intimidation or sabotage. Now, these could be direct or indirect threats that happen. It could include property damage, like taking the dog or destroying your house, turning off your utilities, sabotaging a date. So let's say you've started dating again. This person could show up at your date. It's happened. Calling Child Protective Services, filing false police reports, following you to social events, threatening harm to you or themselves. That's a very common one of abusers, is where they threaten to unalive themselves as well as you, and we've seen it time and time again. Threatening the victim with harming others, so their friends and family or their children. And then threatening to release your intimate photos. This one is far more common than you would believe. So let's say you're in a relationship with somebody and you've sent nudes to each other, nudes, lewds, whatever, it doesn't matter. You did it into the privacy of your relationship. You have a right to do that. They're threatening to blackmail you or send all the photos to your friends and family. That is a form of image abuse, and it is illegal in 48 states. Okay, we're getting into the more meat and potatoes, understanding baseline behaviors. So baseline behaviors, just, I think there's only one slide on this, so that should make you feel better. We're whipping through it all. Let's define baseline as the normal behavior of us. So how I'm talking now is a little more animated because I'm on video and I know it's being recorded, but also it's normal for me to do this when I'm doing a presentation. This is verbal and nonverbal cues you use to assess and understand what is normal or average for somebody. So it could include how they conduct themselves, like small talk. Does their voice go up or down in a conversation when they get excited, when they ask questions? Do they use their hands? I talk with my hands a lot, so that's a feature that's normal for me. Do they make jokes? Are they funny? Do they use memes as a way of self-deprecating? Yes, I do. Are they extremely sarcastic? Also me. So when baselining, you're looking to capture like a normal vocal tone and speed. Are they sitting up straight? Are their shoulders back? Are they looking into the camera? Are they talking with emphasis? Are there nervous tics? Do they laugh? Do they have hand gestures? All of these things are things that you catalog without even realizing it. We all have the ability to do this, and we all do it on a daily basis. And some of us do it faster more than others. Some of us just do it because we want to know what's normal. Like when somebody is in fear or in pain or angry, those are different circumstances than when somebody is at their baseline. So baseline is simply knowing what's normal for a person and then being able to read a little bit without even knowing that you're doing it. You're cataloging all of these things that are normal for this person. And when something is abnormal, then you can see it. Okay. This is one of the best Christmas movies, and it's almost Christmas season once we get past spooky season, but spooky season for a little bit longer. Okay. Spotting predatory patterns. Okay, this is the big picture of what we're looking at. So we've covered sly, surveillance, life invasion, interference, and intimidation. Now we need to talk about the duration, the intensity, and the frequency of the behavior. All of those things together create kind of the bigger picture of what we're looking at, is like, how long has it been going on? How intense is the contact? How frequent is the contact? All of those things impact the level of threat or possible escalation of the individual. And then understand the nature and context of the threats. So when we're talking about a predator or a stalker, you want to know what their motivation is. And a lot of times we don't, because we probably don't know the individual. We don't always know we're being stalked. We don't always know when the behavior starts. And we also don't necessarily recognize when it's increasing in frequency unless we have a long time to study that. Proxy stalking, again, if you don't know that you're being stalked and somebody else is showing up in your life that's a friend of the stalker and you don't know they're friends, how would you know that? But these are things to kind of file away in the back of your head. Does this person have access to weapons? And do they have a history of this? Like, all of these things are going to affect how the harasser or stalker approaches somebody and approaches specifically their victim. What is the victim's level of resistance to their contact? And how persistent are they as somebody who's harassing or stalking another person? And when we say victim resistance, that often people think that means, like, how long can they withstand the harassment or stalking? What I'm talking about really is, are they responding to it? Are they ignoring it? Are they making a plan? Are they working in silence? How well equipped are they emotionally to handle it? So there's always a breaking point for everybody until they get help or until they know when to ask for help or know what to do, or the things the path to follow. It's not the same for everybody, but the minute they start to feel unsafe, that's when the harassment and predatory behavior generally escalates. So that's what they're looking for, is the tipping point. And the victim resistance to that, the kind of support that they have in place and the tools that they have at their disposal, those are all things we have to build in and learn and help them recover from. So the history of the predator or stalker is important. Do they have a history of partner control, jealousy, and violence? Often with domestic violence abuse, you don't necessarily know that the previous partners had it, or you didn't believe them until it happened to you. So it's, if they have a history of violence, we don't necessarily know, but we'll find out real quick, because usually there is a history of violence. Do they have a criminal past? Do they have a record? Do they have a history of substance abuse or mental health problems? Now, none of these things individually make an abusive person, nor does everybody who has an issue of substance abuse or addiction harm people. You can't broad stroke everybody with the same kind of brush. Everyone's a little bit different. These are just all things that can impact how they approach harassment, stalking, and intimate partner violence. Okay, again, duration, intensity, and frequency. So increased frequency, intensity, and duration, that's a higher level of risk. So the longer it goes on, the more frequent the contact and the more intense, all of those things together place a higher level of risk on the victim. The duration of the stalking case, again, may be unknown, as patterns generally go in a cycle, and we don't always know when they started. And if they stop for a period of time, sometimes they'll stop contacting you and then start up again. Maybe they're having life stuff, depression, whatever. Maybe they are traveling and they don't have time to harass or stalk you while they're traveling. I don't know. So frequency of contact and the number of tactics being used by the offender. So when we talk about tactics, that's why we talk about SLY. That's why we talk about surveillance, life invasion, intimidation, and interference. All of those things, they could do a variety of things from those categories, or all of them. It just depends. So are they doing all of those, and how intensely are they doing it, and how long are they doing it? And then the locations of where the contact occurs, physical, in public, or online. Yeah, so we all feel like we're being stalked at this point, don't we? Okay, we've hit the spotting the red flag section. If you're taking notes, this is a good place to start, because I guarantee you'll recognize some of these, perhaps if you've been dating or ever dated, or if you have ever been in a friend group where some of these things have happened to you, or perhaps you have a toxic parent. These could apply to you as well. Stalking and harassment don't always happen by a partner. Sometimes they happen by a parent or a friend. Okay. So somebody is overly friendly and providing too much information to you up front when you didn't ask for details, or you barely know the person. So let's say you, hypothetically, you met somebody on Facebook, or you met somebody on Snapchat, or you met somebody on Tinder, or you met somebody on Twitter. It doesn't matter. You met somebody on social media and they're suddenly your BFF. They're like your best friend forever, soulmate, the friend you didn't know you ever needed, and suddenly they're there and they love everything about you, and they're like, oh my god, you're so great, I can't believe we have so much in common. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen this, you've experienced it, or you know somebody who has. Love bombing doesn't have to just be relationship, like romantic relationship love bombing. This could be, again, from a parent, a friend, somebody you've never met, a casual acquaintance, but they, compliments, flattery, declaring that you should have been friends forever, things like that. This is most common in romance scams or personal relationships and friendships, but it does happen with more casual relationships too. Using social media and networking to provoke jealousy or rivalry. So, for example, if you're in a group chat, we've all been in like Slack group chat at work, or team meetings, or whatever, or Zoom calls during the pandemic. So if this person has put you in a group chat and like suddenly there's like rivalries you didn't know about, information you didn't know, they have another group chat and they're talking about you. This person has decided to provoke group jealousy against you because they're maintaining a cover of innocence by doing so. Basically, they're saying, you're the bad guy. They're making you out to be the problem, not them. They're laying blame on other people, on other situations, on other things. They're creating drama. You know exactly the type of people I'm talking about. Lies and excuses for everything. So there's always an excuse. There's always somebody to blame, even for things that don't require an excuse. They lie to lie. They lie about lying. They blame others even if it's their fault, and they spend time rationalizing their behavior. Playing the victim and degrading you to teach you a lesson. This is very common with toxic parents and partners. Additional red flags. They accuse you of emotions that they are intentionally provoking. Now, if you've ever been in the room with somebody who's done this to you, a boss, a parent, a friend, um, they say, "Oh my God, why are you getting so angry? You seem a little upset. What's going on? I don't understand." And you're getting more agitated because they're telling you that you are actually angry and you're not angry, and you're calm and your voice isn't raised and you're totally level, and you're getting more irritated because they're telling you you're irritated, or somebody tells you to calm down and you're perfectly calm. This is the type of, they're intentionally provoking that emotion in you. Okay, they focus on your mistakes and not their own. Oh, hey, we all know somebody like that. Tearing you down and undermining your reputation, labeling you as a gossip. This is common in workplace harassment cases, workplace bullying, pushing your boundaries and asking or convincing you to do things you don't want to do. This is very common for dating, but sometimes in friendships too. They're asking for information about you that you maybe don't want to disclose, or they talk about subjects that make you uncomfortable, even if you've said they make you uncomfortable, and they still push that envelope a little bit further. That's a form of manipulation, and it's a red flag. They flatter you, like your deepest insecurities, the things that you are so insecure about, that they mirror your greatest fantasies. They play whatever role you need them to be, whether it's the white knight in a romantic relationship, or if you need them to be like the best boss in the whole world, or the perfect friend, or the perfect parent, or great support system. They will be that for you. Anyway, well, we know somebody is lying. Okay. So now we're getting to the practical things. Please type in the chat if you have any questions. Again, I'm covering a lot of material, and I'm sure some of you have checked out by now. So it's good that you're getting a recording of this. But so securing your social media and why it matters. Your data is a roadmap to you, and everything that you put online is a way for an offender or an attacker to get to you. So I understand that this is very high level, 10,000-foot view of how we're looking at this, but it's really important because a lot of the end users, a lot of the victims, a lot of people who are in the middle of the situation don't understand what has exposed them or how this person found them. So the ways that you can be vulnerable, there's a plethora of them, not just the ones listed here, but we've talked about blackmail schemes like sextortion, financial and emotional blackmail, exploitation of your family and friends. Fraud scams via social media and phishing, especially going into the holidays, are very, very common. Ransomware, obviously, that's been a huge issue in the last few years for hospitals, companies, you name it. We've had problems with ransomware. So being blocked out of your accounts in your organization to pay you have to pay a ransom to get access. Leaking of your personal information online, doxing, very common. We deal with it every day. Doing damage to business and reputation, and then also identity theft. So when we're talking about securing your platforms, if this is happening to you, if you're being doxxed, if you're being harassed, if you're having targeted harassment, there's a few things you have to consider. You might consider closing the accounts you're no longer using. We all have 100 accounts we opened, like MySpace back in, I don't want to date myself, like, oh God, when did MySpace start? Mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. We all had one. Third-party apps. So if you're running a business through Facebook or Instagram, or you're online anywhere, you've probably connected third-party apps. Those are all ways that somebody who's after your information can get access to you. They're all data points. So think about third-party apps. If they don't need access, you can remove those. Obviously, strong passwords. And then when you're using mobile apps, a lot of times we sign up for our mobile apps with the same password we use for, I'm sorry, with the same email address that we use for everything. Consider setting up a separate, like if your teens or your kids are on social media, which they probably are to some degree, or they play on Roblox, or they have Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, they're doing online gaming or Minecraft, whatever it is. Consider setting up like a separate email address for that, like a family email address for your kid, so that you know what accounts they have access to and you can kind of monitor it a little bit more closely. This is a way to separate your information a little bit and not have all your social media or all of your like personal content mixing with your business. Okay, so other ways to spot things, monitoring your social media regularly. If your company has outsourced this, or if you have outsourced this, please make sure you check on it regularly, including the person who has access. Across organizations, you can limit access to social media accounts using access controls. I know that's like I said, there's a lot here, and not all applies to individuals. Some apply to business more so. Again, separate your personal and professional accounts. Don't mix your business and your social media and your professional. Try to keep those separate, even though it means more logins for you. Be wary of anybody who promises you an all-in-one security solution. Everything is hackable, everything. And we all know this. And then what we've really been experiencing recently, especially with the outbreak of war in the Middle East, um, is propaganda, misinformation, and disinformation. Fake news stories on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever media platforms you're on, even the mainstream media has been propagating misinformation and disinformation. So the reason you want to watch out for this is because it's a way for somebody to get access to you, clicking on links, phishing links, clicking on tracking links. They're looking for access to you and into your accounts online. This is a way they can do that, is by giving you a false information or a false news story. It's happened. Okay, so we're going to talk about building a safe and secure social media mindset. Awareness is part of that. What you need to consider. People care about you. They care about your data, whether you are whether it's a company or a group of, cyber thieves and hackers, or whether, I mean, I know I'm a hacker, but no, I'm not that kind of hacker. Whether it's about your work or your personal life, people care about your data. It's money to them. So for a harasser or stalker or somebody who's after you, this is all good information. Everything is a data point and access to you. So know where you're vulnerable. And the best way to do that is to Google yourself occasionally and find out what is available about you publicly, and whether somebody could pay a few bucks to get detailed credit information on you or detailed reporting on you. And then the third thing to think about is that you have a right to privacy. Just because a company has information on you, you have a right to know where that information is going. You have a right to have privacy. And unfortunately, in the US especially, we don't value that the way they do in the EU and under GDPR. So we don't have a federal privacy law, but you do have a right to know where your information is going and how you can better protect yourself. Because all of these data leaks, all these security breaches affect us personally, because now we're talking about identity theft. Now we're talking about money loss. Now we're talking about stolen credit cards. All of these things affect your way of life, and it all comes back to privacy. Additional things to think about. I know a lot of security professionals, like, we tend to preach one thing and do another, and I am guilty of this too. But setting up two-factor or multi-factor authentication is just one small step that we could take, encouraging people in our family and our friend groups to we could help walk them through it. We could do better ourselves. So, like, I know we're supposed to lead by example, but sometimes we fail at the basics. And going back to the basics is often makes us better, a little bit better than like low hanging fruit. So anything we can do to mitigate a little bit does help. If you want to use a password manager, that is an option. They're available for your organization or your family. Something to think about. And again, researching yourself, knowing where you're vulnerable. Again, I'm going to keep saying that over and over, because it's most people don't realize how much information is actually available. Or if they do, they don't care, because everyone's saying to them, well, if they know everything about me, why does it matter? Why do I care? And then my response to that question is always, there is something in all of our lives that we would like to keep private: our personal life, our relationships, our romantic relationships, our relationships with our children. Those things don't necessarily all have to be online. It's a digital age. It does not mean that you don't have some things in your life you don't want people to know about. Perhaps you have a medical diagnosis that you don't want to disclose for whatever reason. There are lots of things in your life that you have a right to keep private if you want to. Just because it's out there doesn't mean it has to be if you don't want it to be. So taking steps to remove your information or things that make you uncomfortable having the general public know isn't a bad thing. Okay, managing your online footprint. So depending on where you are online and what you're doing, how you use the internet, or how somebody who's experienced harassment and stalking uses the internet may be a little bit different. Or if you're a sex worker, or if you're a government employee, or if you work for a private contract, there's a lot of different scenarios where you might not use your real name online for whatever reason. So do you use a pseudonym? How do you engage online? And then how is all that information, that basic information, put together in a roadmap to you? So if you're using a pseudonym, did you separate that out, like I suggested, separating out your social media accounts from your professional accounts, only providing basic information, using not your real mobile number when you need to enter a phone number, using a VoIP number, so like a Google Voice number or some other variety. Okay, if you use Google, you can do it. Yes, you can do a plus at the end of your email. That's a really good point, Rain. Um, you can use a Google, like, let's say you just have a Gmail account. We all have like 5 Gmail accounts. I know we do. So if you're using one of them, you can add a plus at the end of your email and create a semi-unique emails that help you figure out when stuff leaks. So like I do that for Twitter, I do that for Instagram. So like I have the same email address for those, but then I add a plus after and I know exactly where the information leaked from if it does leak. Um, and then the other thing to think about is you might need a burner number beyond that. Like a Twilio has the option to do this. There's a few other platforms where you can get text now numbers. Not all of them are the safest. I've used my sudo and I've used the burner app. It just depends on your threat model and your risk profile. And then your profile photos. I know we talk about all of these things that seem obvious to us if we're security professionals, but if you're not, if you're somebody who is just an average internet user, you don't necessarily think about what's in the background. Like here, I have some stuff in the background. I don't have my background blurred, but I'm also in a closet. So like not much you can do. There's not much you can tell beyond my head and a very generic coffee photo behind me. But again, if I'm doing photos and profile photos, I try to keep my background as blank as possible so it's not super obvious what's in my background. But not everyone thinks about that. I do OSINT for a living. Of course, I think about that, but not everyone does. Oh, yes, this is me, obviously. I hope you're all at least slightly entertained by me. If not, you're bored and sleeping, which is also an option. I understand it's nap time. Okay, how to deal with cyber harassment and stalking. So let's get to about safety planning. Remember when I said, like, this is probably like almost an hour ago now that I said this, but when I said that if you're the victim of harassment, stalking, or intimate partner violence, that sometimes you cannot stop communication with your harasser or stalker because you have children, because you have to co-parent, because there's legal case going on. In a lot of instances, you can't stop contact with them, but if you can, that's recommended. um but you have to ensure the stalker knows that their contact is unwanted. And in that case, if you're doing that, you're telling them one time and only once that you do not want contact with them. Now, if you have to maintain contact, that's a slightly different scenario, and you have to be super careful how you phrase things. But I know in custody cases, especially in family court, sometimes there's texting apps that the court uses so the only communication you have with the co-parent or your ex-partner is through that app about children. It's about, oh, we're dropping the kids off here. This is the pickup time. You're getting them from school. You have them for this. So it's only about custody and it has nothing to do with you. there are there are systems in place. They don't always work, and not every county, city, locality, town has them. But a lot of times when there's very contentious or domestic violence or protective orders involved, there's very strict contact only. And drop off is usually at a neutral location like a police station or a school or somewhere where there's other witnesses. Again, each situation is unique. Okay, disengagement is advisable, but not always possible. So when we're talking about harassment and stalking on social media, sometimes people are like, well, why are you online? Or why do you have to have social media? Or I hate social media. I don't want to be online. Well, it's weird when you don't. A lot of people are like, they ask me, like, well, why do you do what you do? Like, you get harassed and stalked. Why would you let people know who you are? And I said, it's a very fine balance for me between being too public and being too private, and being a legitimate person actually existing in the world, and people knowing who I am and having some visibility to give access and training like this, and then also protecting my own privacy and my own health and safety. So deleting your accounts isn't always an option, but going private might be. If you're undergoing severe targeted harassment, you may have to delete your social media for a while until it dies down or until there's an investigation or whatever's happening to you. Sometimes, like, you need to keep your accounts up because there's an ongoing investigation and they're gathering data, right? So maybe setting your accounts to private or limiting your access to them. You just leave them up and you don't use them. You limit the details in your bio. You scrub out as much personal information as you can. Um, this seems obvious, but unfortunately, on all the social platforms, most of them want you to sync your contacts, and sometimes we unknowingly do that. I think when I first signed up my Instagram a really long time ago, I accidentally did that. And now, anytime I make a new account, if I make it from my old phone or my old account, it automatically suggests my profile to everyone I've ever met since high school. So, yeah, that's super fun. Uh, so set all your posts to private and limit your profiles, especially on Facebook, for friends or limited or restricted profile. And I know we all hate Facebook, but a lot of people are still on there. So, okay. Map your online present and collect presence. Yes, presence and collect as much information about yourself as you can. Sometimes it's called researching yourself, searching for yourself, or self-doxing. Again, back to knowing your vulnerabilities. Take threats seriously. Now, this is the one where somebody tells me they get an online threat, or they know somebody who got an online threat and they don't want to report it to law enforcement. And my answer to that is, even if we don't like law enforcement, if you are physically being threatened even by somebody online, you have to take it seriously. You have to take it like they mean it, because it could mean your life, the life of your family, or the life of other people you know are at risk. And you might not think it is, but yeah, long-standing account issues is very tough. Yes, it is. It is. We all have a history online. Like, I have accounts from 20, 25 years ago. So I've been at it a very long time. We all have, if you're at my young age. Anyway, so if you are threatened though, please consider reporting it to the police if your situation allows that, and if it's safe to do so. But before you do, document everything: screenshots, timelines, dates, and places. And if you are helping somebody do this, God bless you. It is hard work, but they need support. And if you're adjacent to somebody that's experiencing this and you know how to help them, this is how you do it. You help them put it into a timeline so that they can report it, because the last thing you want is to not report it and then something happens to you. And now the police they can't do anything until the person physically comes after you, because the laws are very restrictive. It's like, it's very rare that cyber stalking cases get harassment cases get prosecuted within the first 2 or 3 instances of it. It's when it starts escalating that they can actually do something, which is very, very unfortunate for the victim. It's why documentation and evidence is so important, and because it shows a history of abuse, violence, threats, etc., and an escalation of that behavior. And then the last thing, get support from your friends and family. And I say this, it doesn't necessarily mean your blood family. It means your chosen family. It means the people that you trust to help you through a situation like this. Because sometimes when somebody admits to having intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, or being stalked, people, one, don't believe them, or two, think that they've done something to cause that behavior. Or the worst option is they don't care. So you will very quickly find out who will be on your corner when shit like this goes down, unfortunately. And it's very, very stressful. Okay. Harassment and stalking on social media continued. Secure communications. So I know that us in the security field are aware of Signal and Wire and Threema and Wicker and 1,000 other apps out there that do secure encrypted messaging. Again, nothing is 100% secure, but it is better than SMS or regular text messaging. Using disappearing messages on both sides of the conversation, burner numbers, trying to get people onto messaging apps, especially if they're having targeted harassment, so important. Sometimes setting up a PO box for the organization, if you work for a business, or like if you work from home, not having your mail sent to your home just in case somebody is physically stalking or harassing you. You can do it via USPS. You can do it through UPS and other mailbox providers. It's worth it. These are general guidelines. Again, each situation is going to be unique. Yeah, frustrating when you can't give them a case on a silver platter. There's never a case on a silver platter, unfortunately. Never. I have yet to have one that was perfect, that was perfectly packaged, where everything went right. I think that would be zero. Okay, quickly, mobile devices and your physical security. Okay, secure devices with a PIN code or passcode. I know I get friction on this every time I say it. The reason I say this is, if you are crossing borders, if you are a sex worker, if you are a vulnerable population, if you are a marginalized person, if you travel for work, legally at the US border, they cannot require you yet to use your PIN code or password to unlock your phone. What they can compel you to do is use biometrics to open your phone. That could change. This is what I know based on recent law and recent enforcement. Know what data, including documents and photos, is kept on your devices. In my case, I have like 3 phones. I don't travel with 3 phones. I travel with a clean phone, but I am not everyone. I am one of those people that I know my business, and I know people want to be in my business. So if you have suggestive photos, if you have anything that you don't want people to see at the border, if you don't have stuff that you want Customs and Border Patrol to look at or TSA to look at, delete it off your phone. Okay. Before you travel, please. Um, and then encrypt your devices if you can. I know I'm speaking mostly about travel here, but it also applies to if you travel for work and you travel with a personal device, or you're going to see family and friends or whatever, and you're going to be near the person, your ex-partner or something. If they have access to your phone physically, anyway, know what's on your phone. Encrypt your devices. iOS comes standard with encryption. Most new Android devices also have device encryption. And then I know we all forget, but please back up your devices to an external storage, maybe a USB drive or a hard drive if you have one. I know that can be cost prohibitive. So if you can do it, if you do it in cloud, whatever, I know nothing is perfect, but something is better than not having backup data. And then clear your browsing history and log out of your accounts, especially if you're going to be crossing borders. Okay, additional things to consider. What content is in your messaging apps? And what have you said? What has disappeared? What has not? Manage your contacts in your phone. I know we all have 500 contacts in our phone. Every time we get a new phone device, every 3 to 4 or 5 years, or however often you get them, we transfer all our old contacts to our new phone. And I know that you really want to talk to your high school boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other from, many years ago. You probably don't, so you could delete them. Just delete stuff you don't need. Contacts are stored in apps and in the cloud and on your SIM card, so keep those in mind. And then change your security questions on your accounts. So make sure it's not something your stalker, harasser, or somebody that knows you would know. For example, so like I have to do security questions on my bank, and embarrassingly enough, I forgot one of them. And when I called customer support to get access to my bank account again, they had to read the word that I had put as my security answer, and the answer was butt stuff. So yeah, I have never laughed so hard, and I think they were very embarrassed that they had to repeat it because I was cackling. Um, yeah, butt stuff. So you can put whatever you want as your answer. You can lie on your security questions, okay? Just so you know. Anyway, so sorry. I just thought, levity. These are dark, hard things we talk about. So don't take it too seriously, but do what you can. Set up your devices to remote wipe. Now, this doesn't mean for everyone, it might not apply to you, but if you're concerned and you won't have time to wipe your device and your device is taken away from you, you may have the option to have one of your team members or a trusted contact to remotely wipe it for you. Like you maybe you've discussed this in the past, or you have a highly sensitive job, or you have highly sensitive stuff on your phone. Again, you're a sex worker, or you're somebody who you're a domestic violence victim and you have your own phone, but it's taken away from you. It could be given to somebody else. It could be looked at. It could be unlocked. The information could be copied. So there's a lot of different scenarios I could imagine this applying to you. But again, or if you're arrested or detained for some reason, weird shit happens and the world is only getting crazier. So I think there's a far more use cases for this than people think about. Now, if your device does leave your line of sight for any reason and is returned to you later, I go off the assumption that it is infected with spyware or monitoring software. Whether I'm traveling or whether law enforcement has had custody of my device or someone else, I assume it is compromised. And so we don't know for sure, but factory reset it, or go about your business until you can get a copy of it and kind of have it analyzed forensically. It's not available to everybody though. So operate under the assumption of compromise if your device is taken from you for any reason. And understand if you do a factory reset, it might not remove all spyware, but it does most of the time. Not all times. I'm not going to say all because that would just be wrong. And then a final note. I'm defining circumstances here related to possible detention or arrest by law enforcement and or crossing borders. So this may not apply to you. Like in this case, I'm thinking about people maybe attending protests as well. These are all situations, but also for harassment stalking victims, these are things to consider, like if somebody has physically gotten your device or if they have been in proximity to your device. Those are all things to consider. So protecting your accounts, review all content in your accounts, especially your email and social media, delete regularly if you can. Know what information puts you and others at risk. So there is collateral damage when you are harassed or stalked, your friends and family will be impacted in some capacity, whether they like it or not. Um, Sometimes somebody is so committed that they will start targeting your friends and family as well. My particular stalker started going after people that I was mutually connected to on social media, started following them, started emailing them, started sending them threatening messages, rape threats, death threats. One email threatened a child. So everybody within your sphere could also be affected. So the things that you share and the things that you know, the things that the victim knows, those could impact other people. Regularly back up and delete content from your accounts, organizational and personal. I know this is hard. I like to save everything. Make a copy of it, take it offline if you can. Information deleted from your account does not necessarily delete it from the other end, remember? So anything you tell somebody else, you know. And then if you need to acquire a new device, please consider, like, if you do need to, usually it's because of stalkerware or spyware. Sometimes just getting a brand new device is easier than trying to remove it. And please let me know if you do know somebody that needs forensic analysis. I have a whole list of resources for that. If somebody has a phone that they think is has got stalker on it, please let me know. I can send you resources for that. And then protecting your accounts. Consider, again, encrypted messaging apps. Get rid of social media you don't need or accounts you don't need. Review your friends and followers on social media. So like who you follow, who your first follow was. People can track you down from that. Some of the richest content is for me as an OSINT investigator is finding people that other people follow, or the accounts that followed them first is sometimes the greatest indicator of how I track you down. It's your social media tree. And it's great hunting for me, but it's risky for a victim. Again, turn off location on your social media accounts or pretend you're somewhere else. I don't know. Photos and videos held by online services can be used to identify your personal contacts, such as your family members, your professional contacts, and your clients. So if you have done, I have a friend who likes to take photos anytime he comes to visit with his friends. Like he travels for work a lot and he likes to do photos on his Instagram and social media and tag everybody. I do not allow my photo to be taken at social events. And that is not because I am doing anything wrong. And it's not because the person I'm with is doing anything wrong. It's not that I'm willing to not meet people in real life, but the work I do is invasive. The work I do is very particular. I don't like to involve other people in my photos because then they could also be targeted. So I do it to protect others as well as myself. That doesn't mean that I won't take photos with you like privately, but like some of my friends I've had for the longest time, 15 years or more, I do not have photos with. So it's just a personal preference, but it doesn't apply to everybody. Make access to your accounts more difficult by logging out, clear browsing data, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that. And then try to limit the number of apps you have on your phone. I know that's a tall order because we all have like 80 apps on our phones now. And then for documentation strategies, we were talking about evidence gathering. If you're experiencing this or if somebody you know is, take screenshots of all text and internet communications with the harasser or stalker. Get a second camera. Now, this is not something everybody thinks about, but let's say you have an old phone. If you can't afford a second camera, but you have a secondary phone that you can capture messages before they disappear. So sometimes the harasser or stalker will have disappearing messages set for like a minute and you don't have a lot of time, but you have a second phone. You could take photos of those messages before they disappear, so that you have documented them somewhere other than screenshots. Sometimes if there is a keylogger or malware or any type of spyware or stalkerware on the phone, it will record when you take screenshots. So if you have a secondary camera you can use to take those screenshots for you, that's possibly one way you could go undetected if you are experiencing harassment and stalking. So if you're talking to victims, you might suggest like, oh, do you have an old phone lying around? Maybe. And it might not always be convenient, might not always get it, but it is an option. One thing we forget, getting phone records, physical phone records from your phone company to demonstrate the frequency of calls. So let's say you're documenting for a client or a friend or a family member or somebody who's going through a contentious divorce and there's domestic violence involved and they're sending harassing phone calls. You could get the phone, you could have them get the phone records. And now you have a record from the phone company of all the times that this person has called you. Keep track of stalkers' behaviors by writing down incidents in a log. I have a reference down here on the slides for some printable logs or logs that you could download onto a tablet to record everything. And I will send this to you. I'll send the slides as part of the email just so that you have it and you can send them to other people if you want. These are just resource options. Okay, physical safety and security. I promise you we're almost done. I'm trying to get us through the rest of this. Safety planning. Inform neighbors and or apartment managers about the situation. So if you live in a condo, if you live in an apartment complex, if you live in a housing development, suburbia, whatever, like in a city, like inform your closest neighbors, the ones that you are friendly with, that you have somebody following you, have somebody harassing you, whatever. Provide them a description so that they know what to look for, so that they're aware if they see something hanky, they can report it too. This is specifically for the victim, but pack a bag with their important documents, items, IDs, clothing, medications, pet food, medications, your children's clothes and IDs, copies of all that. You need a go bag. They need a go bag. Identify escape routes in your building and your home. And then change your locks if you can afford it and upgrade your security system. This is physical safety too, but does your organization and do you as an individual have security policies in place? Do you have steps you can take to protect your hardware, your software, your backup devices? These are all points of exposure for your organization, for you, for somebody who is harassing, stalking, or causing harm. Around your home and office, like I said, get to know your neighbors. They can be allies or they can be the biggest threat against you. Review how you secure your doors, windows, and other entry points into your home or office. And then consider installing security cameras if you have them, Ring cameras, Nest, whatever you can afford. It's better than nothing. And then, but they're also make you vulnerable. So there's that too. Good and bad to everything. Move your documents and equipment away from your work area. If you have people in your home, let's say you have somebody in fixing your air conditioning or whatever, you have a handyman. Make sure you don't have all your stuff out when they're there. Avoid leaving open USB ports and Ethernet ports accessible to people in public areas of your office or your home. Set strong passwords for your wireless networks. I know these all seem obvious, but sometimes reminders are good. When you set up your wireless network, let's say you have family coming for Christmas, make sure you set up, like, if you know how, and if you have somebody in your life that can help you do this, great. Have them set up a guest network for people that are going to stay in your home. Don't have them log on to your main network. You can segregate them out a little bit. That way, if anything happens, it's not going to affect your main network. And then be careful. I know sounds silly, but be careful of any USB memory sticks lying around. Don't just stick them into your computer that's connected to the internet, because it could infect your whole device. Just a thought. Okay. Criminals and politically motivated attackers may have reasons to target your data. They could be seeking your financial information, sensitive data related to your work, or personal details used to intimidate, blackmail, or impersonate you. Now, this is more associated with, like, maybe nation state hacking or criminal group hacking or identity theft rings. But everyone is exposed to this when we do online shopping, when we're on LinkedIn, when we're on social media. So this could happen to you. It happens to smart people too. Getting scammed, getting harassed, it happens to a lot of people, and a lot more than will be willing to admit it publicly. So here are a few recommendations to protect your data. If you live with others or you share office space with others, let's say you work in a co-working situation, or you're like in a hybrid work situation where you're hot seating at a work, know who's sharing your office spaces, know who's coming and going, because all of that can determine what you can expect from each other and how secure other people are with their information in their workspaces. Again, these are more specific to like working from an office type situation, but since everyone's going back to the office now, these are things to think about. The entire world is on fire, obviously. Find out your legal protections against law enforcement entering your home, your office, your workplace. Know what the laws are that protect you from law enforcement. Because remember, they're not out to protect you necessarily. They only are reactive. They're not proactive. And sometimes they see you as the bad guy, even if you're the victim. So know what your rights are as a tenant. Know what your landlord's rights are, know what the law enforcement can and can't do, especially for search and seizure purposes, and know who can and cannot enter your property, whether you're in an apartment or condo situation or an HOA. Like, is somebody allowed to, come into your home for a reason? Avoid running Ethernet cables outside your buildings. I know that sounds stupid, but again, if somebody's physically harassing or stalking you, they can also get into your networks. Lock up equipment you're not using, fire safes for documents, things like that. This last point is kind of an odd one, but if you've ever worked in federal contracting, government, or private offices, sometimes they will actually padlock CPUs, the bigger CPUs, or laptops, or put them in a safety cabinet so that they can't be stolen, because physical hardware also is data. Even though we don't think about it that way because everything is digitized, all of these devices contain data. Okay, secure locking cables as is an option if you're traveling, maybe. Just a thought. Cover camera lenses, and then unplug smart devices you're not using. So I know we all love a smart fridge or a smart toaster. You cannot unplug the fridge, but does your toaster need to be a smart toaster? Don't know. Smart washers happen too. I don't know. I'm always wondering, like, when we have all these smart devices, what happens when the device manufacturer goes out of business and we're left with a device that won't update firmware? I'm left pondering these things. And is that a point of attack for somebody who's determined to harass and stalk me? Yes. Yes, it is. Consider purchasing privacy filters for your devices. Privacy filters can makes it difficult for somebody to screen read. So like if you're at the airport and you're reading a smutty book on your Kindle, for example, not saying I ever do that. No, I would never. A privacy screen on your phone means that they can't read what you're reading. You're not exposing, minors or anybody else to something they didn't want to see, right? They are available for laptops, external monitors, tablets, and smartphones. And then I know we talk about digitizing everything, but if you work with paper documents or leave physical notes for yourself, and I'm not talking about, passwords at the bottom of your monitor screen, which I'm sure we've done on occasion, but I mean like notes you leave for yourself, things that you write about your business. You cannot hack paper, but your calendars, your events, your planners, your journals, your address books, if you still have those kinds of things, but your sticky notes can be stolen, copied, and photographed. And sometimes they contain sensitive information about you. And if you have somebody harassing, stalking, or looking for information that you've written down, that gives them access. And I know I say in this first point in public spaces not to use your laptops, phones, and tablets. That's not realistic, but if you believe you're fairly safe, then that's fine. But keep your devices with you at all times. Be aware of your surroundings. If you're working on something in public, protect your screen again, just so somebody can't shoulder surf over you. And then consider using a VPN if you're working on a public Wi-Fi, even if the Wi-Fi has password. And I know people have positive and negative things to say about VPNs. I don't have a strong opinion about them other than I use them, but I use them for work purposes. And I understand the limitations. I understand they're not 100% secure. I understand they're hackable. I understand all of that. But sometimes you need to divert traffic. That's all I'm saying, depending on what you're looking up for whatever reason. So I have a whole slide here on virtual private networks. Now we're defining that as providing a level of anonymity on the web by creating a private network from a public internet connection. So from your ISP changes your internet protocol address, okay? It masks your IP so you can take different online actions and it's harder to track and trace you. There are some VPN services that are better than others, such as I don't like NordVPN. I don't like ExpressVPN. I think they're unethical. I think they're gross and I think they track you. Now, Proton VPN is the one that I use, and I understand it's still a company, and I understand it's an organization, but they're based in Switzerland, and they are a little bit better about not tracking you. Not perfect, nothing is. It's just a measure, and it's not for everybody. VPNs can be used to access region-restricted websites, shield browsing, and prying eyes on public Wi-Fi as well. So again, I use Proton. I'm not selling it. I am not an affiliate. I'm just saying what I use. Okay, documentation strategies. Consider installing cameras. I'm just summing up the things we've talked about to capture evidence of your harasser or stalker's behavior. Photograph any evidence of property damage if they're physically coming after you, and work with your building security if you live in an apartment or condo, or if you live in a like a suburb where you have like a neighborhood watch or something. Maybe you like that person, maybe you don't, but let them know, record, log evidence of the stalker being anywhere near you on campus, at work, or in your work apartment or condo. Okay, we have a little bit more on physical safety and then we'll be done for the day. We're addressing threats again because they're so serious. Take any threat seriously, online or offline. Report it if you can. Document everything. Again, screenshots, recordings, emails, text messages, voice notes, letters, anything you have. Put it in a timeline, make copies of it, and take a copy of that to hand over to police because they will take your copies if you don't have them. So give them a copy and keep a copy for yourself. And then before you report the accounts, ensure you have documentation, evidence collected, and make sure they take your report, because I have heard on more than one occasion of somebody going in to report harassment or stalking. They didn't want to take them seriously, and they had to talk to a second. Escalate until they listen. Get loud. It's the only way to get them to listen to you. And if you have to be annoying to do it, do it. I don't care if I'm the burr under the saddle of every police department on the East Coast. I will make you listen to me. Okay? Report the threat to local police, and if it's online, report it to the FBI through IC3. And then for safety planning, these are some tips that may help somebody if you know they're a victim of stalking, harassment, or intimate partner violence. Changing your patterns, routines, routes, and social media use. So if you go running at the same time every day, no, you don't. Now you go running any time of the day that you have a free 30 minutes. You take a walk with your kids in the evening. No, you don't. You take a walk in the middle of the day. I don't know. Figure it out. Change your driving routes to work, change your patterns of behavior, change the times you use social media. And I'm going to caveat this and say, if you are the victim in this case, it is not your fault. And it sucks that the onus is on the victim to change their patterns just to avoid being harassed, stalked, or abused. Consider getting a protective order if that is an option available to you. Check with your state laws on whether address confidentiality is an option. It is not in every state, and it's applied a little bit differently in each state. But if you're a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, physical stalking, there are a few other cases, but you can often have your address hidden from public records, including voting records. Like, they will remove it because it's to the benefit of your safety, to keep you safe and not have your address public for any reason. And then give a picture of your stalker to security, friends, and colleagues that you trust at work, home, and school. Keep a copy of your protective order at work, home, school, in your car, and show it to officials if needed. Save any voicemails, text messages, and emails. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We're all fine. Okay. Got recommended resources, and then we're done. Key tools to help protect you or the victims that you know. Two-factor authentication, verification, we've talked about that. If they can't use a physical security key like a YubiKey, an authenticator app is a good option. I use Authy. There are other ones available. You can find sites where there is 2FA available on 2fa.directory/US. It has all the sites that I know of online that have 2FA available, and I'll walk you through how to do it. Authy also has its own site of 2FA guides to walk you through setting those up if you're helping a friend or family member. For browsing, Firefox browser and Mullvad browsers are the ones that I use. For internet searches, consider using DuckDuckGo. Nothing's perfect, but it's pretty good. Get an advertising blocker such as uBlock. It can prevent a lot of the trackers and ads. Password manager options. There's an open source one called KeePass, and also 1Password. I know they had something to do with the Okta breach recently. I'm not super familiar with that, so I won't speak on that, but nothing is 100%. This is just one way to keep your password straight and help you manage safety. Other things, encrypted email, rather than doing Gmail for sensitive documents and conversations, maybe use Proton Mail. Set up backups for your systems, whether it's your website or your documentation or your digitization of your documents. If something happens to your social media, you need to ensure that you have built-in redundancy for your evidence and for any documents that you have online. Dropbox has an option to do backups of your files if you're doing cloud backups. And they also have something called Vaults, which is like a private folder of sorts that it would allow you to store sensitive documents and have one other person have access if something happens to you. So I know that's morbid, but if something does happen to you for whatever reason, whether it's the harasser, stalker, or intimate partner that hurts you, or if you die from other circumstances, this will allow the other person to have access to your sensitive documents and to know how to help you and your kids or your estate or whatever that's left of them to deal with. The Vault is one option to do that. Make physical encrypted backups for your most sensitive files and keep them offline. Maybe give a copy to a friend and show them how to access it if something happens to you. And then again, a VPN to consider. These are resources for victims. Victim Connect is a website that has a variety of law enforcement resources, lawyers. They also have a helpline and a text line. Monday through Friday, I think 9 to 5, but they also have online resources. They have a locator for domestic violence shelters, as well as if something happens, like if somebody gets assaulted, or if there's other variations of harassment, stalking, or abuse occurring. They have a lot of resources on victimconnect.org. RAIN is for victims of sexual assault and rape. They also have a helpline and a text line, and they also have resources for emergency shelters, emergency placement for kids and families. National Domestic Violence Hotline is exactly what it says. And then Safety Net for safety planning around technology. This is a website that helps you plan, have a technical safety plan in place. So, and it's very easy to follow and it's very easy to set up. And it just has some resources for survivors of abuse or intimate partner violence or who have experienced assault, harassment, or stalking. Okay, a few more tools. Delete Me by a Bean. This is a service that helps with removal of your information. Now, it is a third-party service, but it will help you remove information from data aggregation sites like your mobile phone number, your address, etc. This process can take a few weeks or a few months, but if you are in immediate danger or getting threats, you may need to use this. It may speed up the process for you. And then again, secure messaging. And then you can always hire someone to help you. I do this for a living. If you want me to help you remove your data, I also do that. And now we are all members of the privacy support group, and we are here now. Last thing that I will say before I depart, I'm sorry I kept this. I said I was going to keep it under 90 minutes. I'm trying really hard. I'm like 2 minutes from that goal. Take care of yourselves and each other. These types of situations are frustrating, stressful, and you're going to need support. So make sure you tell somebody that you trust and cares about you. Get a consult from a lawyer if you can, or an advocate. Work with a victim's advocate if you are overwhelmed. Take it one step at a time. Tackle one social platform at a time, one site at a time, and have a plan. And that's literally where I will leave you. This is like, you can hire somebody, you can do it yourself, one thing at a time. Okay, that's where we are. Does anybody have any questions? I did get it in under 90. It's like 128, so I think I'm doing okay. Let's see. I did have a question. Trade-offs of biometrics versus pin or pattern unlock when in a public space with overhead cameras are still not recommended. I don't know how much you travel, so it's hard to say. I would have to, you can shoot me an email if you have, and I can probably answer it more specifically, but you're going to be tracked by cameras wherever you go. You can't really avoid that unless you're doing disguise and profile changes and all that, and most people aren't going to do that. So, unless you're like super paranoid and privacy conscious, this is more me thinking like you don't want them accessing everything on your phone, nor should they. They don't need to. Like, yeah, they have your biometrics, but like they can barely find passwords on their own goddamn computers. Sorry, Customs and Border Patrol is not that sophisticated. I've had intimate experience with them. They're not that great, I promise. It's just, what are they doing with that data and with all the biometrics after the fact? That's more my question. If you guys want to unmute and ask questions, feel free. But this is just more like, it's hard to say. I would still stick with the PIN and the password. Let's see. If you hold a volume and side button on an iPhone, it disables face and forces PIN. I mean, they would have to know your PIN and you'd have to give it willingly. Like I said, nothing is perfect, and I wish I had great answers, but my experience with TSA and with CPB and Homeland Security has not been positive. I am not a big fan. Yeah, have a good evening, afternoon. I just didn't want to. If you guys have to drop, feel free. I'm going to end the call here, but I think a lot of people have just everyone has a different threat model, and everyone has a different threat profile. So it's like I'm unwilling to concede unless they're forcing me to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not willing to let them have it unless they absolutely have to. And even then, I'm that difficult chick that went to secondary and it was like, I'm gonna just give you a phone number and you're gonna call them and you're gonna leave me alone. This is my lawyer. I'm not talking to you. But they took away my phone, so like I had to get a new phone. But anyway, that's a whole other story. If you have any other questions, please let me know. All my contact information is here. And again, I will send you the slides and the recording, probably with a little bit of editing, but I hope this was helpful and I hope some of this information is useful. I know there's a ton of it. But it's so hard to condense this into something shorter. Like, I've tried and I can't. So anyway, please keep in touch if you have any questions. Find me on socials. I'm pretty much everywhere. And please take care of yourselves. All right. Thank you.